In the first place, we hope to publish a paper which will be interesting and acceptable as a local chronicle and as a journal of general information to all who have made their homes out west. To the miner, the farmer, the ranchman, the colonist, to employers and workmen, to old and young. We shall from time to time have something to say, which may be of interest and of service.
Editor J.E. Liller wrote those words 150 years ago in the first edition of Out West, the Colorado Springs newspaper that would become the Gazette. The original mission still rings true today as the Gazette celebrates its sesquicentennial, the oldest continuously operating business in Colorado Springs. In fact, Colorado Springs founder, General William Jackson Palmer, launched the paper just 1 year after founding the town. He believed a town wasn't a real town without a real newspaper. And ever since, the two have risen and fallen, and risen again together. As goes Colorado Springs, so goes the Gazette. When the city was small, the Gazette was small. It was started in a 2-story frame house on the northeast corner of Tejon Street and Colorado Avenue. Many of the town's important offices were housed in that building. Palmer had his office in the front. The newsroom printing press was in the middle room, and the editor-publisher-printer-reporter lived in the back room with his wife. Upstairs, the town meeting room held the church services and the first school's classes, and was where the fire department was organized, and the town militia met when there was news of Indian raids. When the city thrived, the Gazette thrived. In 1891, the Gazette moved to a stately, new 4-story building on Pikes Peak Avenue, just as gold was discovered in Cripple Creek, fueling the growth of both the town and the newspaper. They held a party for 1,000 people on the opening night of the grand new building. But those early golden days would not last. When the gold boom faded, many people who made it rich left town. Over the next several decades, Colorado Springs barely grew. And the Gazette was sold and sold again. On January 7, 1942, the Gazette helped usher in a new era in Colorado Springs.
Coming to the community as a belated Christmas present, twice welcome, is the War Department's announcement that construction of an Army training camp will be started immediately. That affords this region, primarily a resort, a place in the war economy, and we think it affords the Army a location not excelled anywhere for the training of men.
Thus, Camp Carson was born. During World War II, a huge influx of troops, construction, and other businesses breathed new life into the local economy and its newspaper. In 1946, the Gazette merged with the Telegraph to form the Gazette-Telegraph. The new GT would continue writing for its city, covering stories like the development of the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs and the construction of the Continental Air Defense Command's headquarters, which later became NORAD. In 1955, the Gazette printed a Sears ad with a wrong phone number to call Santa. The number was actually the number for a top-secret phone for the CONAD headquarters, intended to warn them of imminent attack. When calls started pouring in for Santa Claus, the kind-hearted colonel played along, and eventually it became an annual tradition that started the NORAD Santa Tracker program. The Gazette-Telegraph would continue to provide news and information to the citizens of Colorado Springs across the decades that followed.
During this time, the paper was experiencing another major change. For generations, the newspaper industry was almost entirely male-dominated. Over time, reflecting the changing society, the Gazette staff would continue to become more diverse. In 1966, a young woman named Linda Navarro started her career at the Gazette. Now, 56 years later, she is the longest-standing employee and has been with the paper for over a third of its existence.
I started out And I was hired to do city court, amazingly, which we covered because the whole community tended to end up in city court. I did do several different columns over the years that were thoroughly enjoyable. And one of the fun ones was called Did You Ever Wonder? Readers and residents would see something or have heard something about our history. And did you ever wonder about why is that statue there? Or what is that statue? And this went on for years. We learned a lot.
In 1990, the Gazette-Telegraph won its first Pulitzer Prize for the feature story by Dave Curtin about Adam and Megan and the propane explosion that left them and their families scarred. The newspaper celebrated 125 years running in 1997 and dropped Telegraph from its name, becoming the Gazette we all know today. In 2012, Philip Anschutz's Clarity Media Group bought the Gazette and moved it back downtown, just as downtown Colorado Springs was coming back to life.
I've always seen this newspaper not only as one of the great pillars of Colorado Springs and its history, it's told the story of the city in so many ways. Its citizens, its soldiers, civic leaders, medical leaders, business leaders, philanthropists, and so many other people that contributed to the growth of the city for those 150 years.
The Gazette retooled the paper for its digital future, staffing a 24-hour website and soon adding big names like Woody Page and Joey Bunch, and adding other publications such as Colorado Politics, Out There Colorado, and several weekly newspapers in Colorado Springs suburbs.
I think there was a fear in journalism that newspapers would all die, and a number of them have. But those who looked forward and had strong objectives realized that the future of journalism that I joined in the 60s was going to be in the digital world. People want their news now. If anyone has a great story, it can be out there to the public and to the people who care about those subjects within seconds, literally.
The Gazette won its second Pulitzer Prize in 2014 for national reporting by Dave Phillips on combat veterans who were discharged other than honorably. In 2020, the Gazette unhooked its fortunes from the town of its birth for the first time, launching a new digital newspaper, the Denver Gazette, to bring a new voice to Colorado.
The Denver Gazette is a next-generation, fully interactive digital newspaper that really continues and extends the rich traditions we've developed over the last 150 years in Colorado Springs. The technology is new, but the commitment to convening the community we serve for a daily conversation about what matters most is the same. The Colorado Springs Gazette is the place where all the various voices of the city can gather and be heard, to tell each other's stories and to debate our differences, laugh together, to be surprised and delighted every day by something they didn't know about their home. And now the Denver Gazette will carry that same aspiration forward for Denver and the state.
Colorado is the home of myself and my family, and we see these two newspapers as a true labor of love.
Here's to the Gazette's next 150 years.